it almost doesn't matter how creative they are. It doesn't matter if they're using the latest and greatest tactics. There's something more fundamental that's holding the business back. And until you address those things and help that business think more holistically and strategically, those lower level questions are kind of moot points.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, let's do this. Let's just crank through this. I can't wait to introduce my guest today. He's a badass. Let's just put it out there that way. When he's not climbing the hills of Colorado or the Appalachian Trail, he is an absolute legend in the marketing space, a marketing leader, a thought leader, a brand strategist, an advisor, a writer, execution expert. Previously, two-time podcast host of the show Category Thinkers, Category Design, hint, hint, and B2B Growth Show. Best of both worlds right there, in my opinion. He is the author of the Narrative Field Guide newsletter. Definitely want to check that out. Founder, Flag and Frontier. John Rougeux, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Casey. My kids are going to love that introduction. Thank you for that.
Well, all right, man. Now that the cobwebs are off, let's crank into this. I want to ask you the first question. And in order to do that, I got to put on this giant foam finger because all great questions have a giant foam finger. John, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to the market?
All right. Well, it's a good question, but you know what? It's a little bit of a trick question, isn't it? Because there is no number one thing that you can do tactically, at least in my view. There's not one like tip or trick. I think that always ranks to the top for everyone. But so here's what I'm going to say. I think the number one thing you can do is to think about what's happening in your category, what's happening in your space, and what matters to your buyers right now. So for some businesses, it's going to be maybe your brand and really being able to connect with people on emotions and values and beliefs, because that's what matters for the space and the situation you're in. For someone else, it might be maybe evangelizing a problem or a new way of doing things. That's what's important because you're in a different situation and your environment and your categories evolving differently. So I know it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think it's a more helpful answer because I would say if you don't understand what's happening around you and you don't understand what's happening in the environment in which you're competing, you never will come up with the right answer, and you'll be subject to, glomming on to some tactic or some approach that maybe worked well for some other brand in a different situation, but isn't really appropriate for you.
Yeah, man. No, I love this. I mean, by all means, we're here to smash myths and put truth out there. I was hearing these keywords: space, environment, category, the things outside of you that are around you. And it sounds like they're affecting you, and your strategy should be considering this no matter what. So talk to me about category. Talk to me about space, environment, the stuff around our organizations.
Yeah, well, sure. So let me preface this by saying, I used to work as a marketer. I used to lead marketing teams.
Yeah.
And so one of the challenges that I see for marketers especially is that they are kind of put in this position where they are just asked to go execute tactics or deliver on KPIs or, hey, Casey, go get us, 150 more leads this month or, grow revenue by 11%,
Yeah.
whatever that metric is,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And so when you're in that position, but you don't have the ability to maybe even spend time thinking about the larger competitive environment you're working against, or help your CEO and your leadership team think about strategy, 9 times out of 10, you're being set up for failure. So it would be like, let's say you've got a race car and like the only vector you can think about is the tires in the race car. Like maybe everything else is tuned just so to where you can, that little corner of your world is one where you can make a big difference. But if you're, in a Formula One race, but you're driving a dune buggy, the tires, it's kind of a moot point, right? It sounds kind of ridiculous to say that, but like, how many marketers have you met or come across And you can just look at the business and you can just almost tell from a glance, you know what? It almost doesn't matter how creative they are. It doesn't matter if they're using the latest and greatest tactics. There's something more fundamental that's holding the business back. And until you address those things and help that business think more holistically and strategically, those lower level questions are kind of moot points at that point in time.
I mean, why do we fall into this trap? Why do we get so much tunnel vision on ourselves and neglect to be thinking about the entities around us?
That's $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why we're here.
I don't want to look. There's probably a lot of nuance and different answers to that. One thing, and I don't know if CEOs always are in a position where they understand maybe what marketing can and can't do. So maybe if you're a marketer and this is the environment you're working in, maybe this is a good signal to maybe look somewhere else. But like, there's a version of leadership, and this isn't, I wouldn't say this is the majority, but there's some leaders who think about the business as we're going to produce a product, and that is what it is. And marketing's job is to simply just go out there and drive revenue. And the world is more complicated than that. I mean, there's situations maybe where that has worked, but if you're in a more competitive environment where maybe a leader in a space has already been established, or there's certain barriers to entry, or certain advantages you need to have in order to compete in that space, marketing can't solve all those problems. And so, for some reason, maybe this is a topic for more research in the newsletter. For some reason, marketing has kind of been like relegated to this ancillary function that's almost treated as like after the fact. Like, we'll go figure out the big boy business decisions, and then marketing, you can go worry about like actually getting business for us. I don't know why. I wish I knew why that has evolved to be the case in a lot of situations. I don't have the answer, but I think that I've seen it enough times to where I know that it's true, at least in some businesses.
Yeah, marketing after the fact. As you said it, I thought, oh yeah, right. It's dictated, it's sort of decided, and then go fetch is
Right.
and you're like, yeah, but this and this and this, and you could be doomed from the beginning if you weren't involved in those decisions. You might be competing completely the wrong direction. To your point, you might have the wrong race tires on. The thought that came to my mind was like, if you've got those, I don't know, those like rain tires. Great, but it's not raining. You're just complete mismatch because you didn't consider where you're going to be at. Yeah, that's so true. It gets dictated. I'm in, man. How do you approach it? So for someone listening to this, where they go, you know what? Yeah, I've been neglecting this. My whole org has. So hopefully most people listening haven't had it dictated to them, because I also see the opposite, which is like no one even thinks about it at all. And so for the marketing leader listening to this, no one's thought about it. Time to step up. Where do we start?
Sure. So let me share maybe like just a very simple, this will be oversimplified for the purposes of like executing this in the real world, but for a podcast, this would be a good maybe framework to start with. So we'll lay out kind of 3 building blocks.
Okay.
So the first one I would think about is, what problem are we solving as a business, and who are we solving it for? And this is really basic, right? Almost when you say it out loud, it seems like, well, duh, of course we should understand that. But when you go, inside a business and you start talking to people, maybe you've experienced this yourself. You can tell me, if you go around the executive team and you ask, okay, that same question, what problem are we solving? Who are we solving it for? It's very rare that you will get a consistent answer. So now think about what that might mean. Like if you have an executive team and they have different responses about one of the most core issues about the business, one of the like most guiding questions you can answer, and you're getting fragmented views, how would you expect that business to be competitive? How would you expect it to maintain momentum? How would you expect it to avoid decisions that start taking it off track? So this is where marketing is actually in a unique position to drive that discussion, because marketing isn't just about, promotion and trying to generate attention and interest for something after the fact. Marketing at its best is really about understanding what problems are people experiencing, what's missing in the world, what's changed in the world around us. Um, what do we need to be like? How do we understand our buyers in terms of what's lacking in their world? And how can we surface those learnings and that insight back to our organization to help inform them and equip them to either refine our solution or maybe come up with new solutions to address that problem. So that's the first building block. Maybe I'll pause there. I'd love to hear your take on that or anything you want to dive into.
How do you surface that information?
You've got to, I mean, this is like, these are simple fundamentals, but they just don't get done. You have to go out and talk to people. You have to go out and talk to your customers. You have to get a read on what's happening in the world. If you don't do that, I'm not sure how successful you could be. Not at that, but just in marketing in general.
Yeah. I get it. It's like table stakes. You have to be communicating and learning and researching. Do you have any particular ways that are your favorite?
I would like to say that I do. I don't. Like, I mean, there's people who are better probably at that aspect of marketing than me.
Yeah.
Um, I, I mean, I've had to do it myself. Like, I've talked to my own clients and asked, I've had to rediscover, what problem am I actually solving for you? Why did you hire me to work for you? What's missing, and maybe what I've been doing and what I could be doing. I'm not asking them to tell me how I should run my business or how I should, run my own consulting services. But I think just persistence and curiosity. If you have those two, there's probably methodologies maybe that could add some more structure to that someone with more of a research background could speak to you. But if you're
Sure.
curious and you're persistent, that's going to get you pretty far.
I feel like that's a trait that a lot of marketers share, just the
Hmm.
curiosity. What does this do? And
Yeah.
sometimes persistence can be annoying to some people, but
Hmm.
honestly, when you're trying to push through, large org changes or even small changes, it takes some persistence to just keep at something over and over again.
Yeah. You know what? And I'll add to that. I would say maybe not being wedded to your own views, or like being willing to like hear things that are uncomfortable or different from what you were hoping to hear would be another way of saying it.
Right? Like asking questions with your own answer in mind, right? Trying to get them to say what you want them to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I could see that happening a lot. I got a survey the other day. It was like, "Why did you buy this product?" Which I actually really liked and was
Hmm.
happy to fill it out because I don't normally do that, and it was like, "The primary reason for you buying this thing was like," and there was a 4, it's like a radio box. "So pick one of these 4." And none
Hmm.
of them were the reason why I bought the thing.
Right.
I'm like, "Dang, this survey is literally doomed from the first question
Hmm.
because none of those answers are why I did it." So, whatever answer they get back is gonna be skewed, right? Or
Yeah.
flat out incorrect in some cases.
Do you remember what the product was and what the like the answers they were offering you to choose from were?
I don't. I feel like I need to find that email or find that survey because it'd be fat. I they were not completely dumb. I mean, they were some of the
Hmm.
answers of why some people might get it, and maybe those are just the main answers, but it wasn't my answer.
Uh-huh.
And I don't feel like I'm that much of a different kind of a consumer. But yeah, it just felt like
Mm.
that's not me at all, guys. And then I stopped taking it at that point.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
You probably didn't feel like you were going to be very helpful to them if they were telling you what they needed to hear from you.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the first piece. It's again, it's not, I wouldn't say that's revolutionary, but I think that has been missed. And it's not that people don't understand that, but as products evolve, as businesses evolve, a lot of times that clarity on that problem and who we're solving it for, it can start to get lost because because things change by degrees, right? So you add a little bit, maybe if it's a software product, you're adding a feature that maybe takes you outside that boundary a little bit, or Maybe a competitor does something and you feel you need to react, but it's just 1 degree away from where you were, and you
Yeah.
compound that over 6 months, 12 months, a couple years, and then you look up one day and you're like, I'm not really sure what our business quite is. And then all around you, your competitors are changing, the market's evolving and becoming more mature. And so you have to reassess and realign in your aim. So that's where I'd start. How, let's go on to number two so we don't kind of belabor the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the second thing is, okay, if you have that input problem and then who we're solving the problem for, the next thing I like to look at or would recommend looking at is where is that problem in its maturity? So what do I mean by that? Well,
Okay.
um, if it's let's say you've addressed something that it's a relatively new insight. Someone hasn't, this is maybe more akin to what a startup might experience, or maybe a business evolving to its next chapter, or like adding a new line of business, for example.
Yeah.
But let's say you've identified something that it's a valid problem, but it's really the solutions either don't exist or they're very nascent. Okay. If that's the situation you found yourself in, this is where we're going to come back into category design and category strategy. The job you need to do, not just as a marketer, but as a business, is you need to essentially build something new. You need to develop a new category of products. You need to bring something new to market that the world hasn't experienced before. Now, if that's what you're doing, then the way you might go about marketing would be very different than maybe a going concern. You're starting to um, evangelize the problem, make sure people see and understand the problem, help them understand the ramifications of that problem. If the problem might exist, but if people don't have a concept of it, then they're not thinking about solving it and then how they might go about looking for a solution.
Right.
So you're like the kind of thought leadership and the kind of new language that you're developing will be very intentional around making that category from kind of an abstract idea to a real thing. So this is a concept that's laid out in a book like Play Bigger, for example. They
Mm.
um, kind of blueprinted that process for creating something from scratch, so to speak. Now, not every company is in that situation. Most aren't. Um, so in another situation, you might have gone through that exercise of clarifying the problem you're solving
Yeah.
and who you're solving it for. And you might look up and say, you know what, this is actually a pretty mature space. Uh, the competitors are defined, customers are aware of what this solution is. We know what job it does for us. We know how it's priced. We know where to get it. And you might even look at that space and say, you know what, not only is it mature, but we're not even the leader. There's another company that's already in that position, or they're poised to get there because of one reason or another. And so then your question is, okay, we're probably not going to try to win this space outright because we're competing in somebody else's turf.
Right.
So what options do we have to us? One, for example, might be you niche down within that space. You find maybe an underserved segment of the market, and that gives you a better opportunity for growth and a more sustainable competitive advantage. Okay, I'll give you one more example, and then I think you'll start to see the theme.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might look at your situation and you might find, hey, you know what? We are that business. We're the leader in the space. I'm not saying this like you would just, it sounds a little silly to say this out loud. It's not like you would just discover this one day. Oh, I work for Salesforce. Did you know that we're the leader in CRM? Oh my gosh, who knew?
We're the number one CRM.
Right.
Holy moly. Wow.
My point is like when you're intentional about naming where your category is in its evolution and then the position you occupy in that category, you know the job to be done. So if I'm Salesforce and I'm CRM, I'm not trying to win that category. I'm already the winner.
Right.
What I have to think about is how do I evolve this space? How do I continue to look for advantages that will compound or grow my advantage? How do I think about, if I'm a marketer, how do I think about maybe the brand we develop as the number one choice, as the safe choice? How do I think about like reinforcing our leadership position in our marketing? So I have a very different paradigm for how I'm thinking about the business at large and about marketing specifically once I start to answer these questions. And again, they're basic questions, but until your organization is aligned on the answers to them, and we're aware of that we all have the same mental model about the business, you're not able to really work cohesively and start to build that velocity.
Got it. So even that self-awareness of where are we in the marketplace? I suppose you could even ask AI, hey, where do I stand?
AI might be a good resource to start looking at those dynamics for sure, especially if you're you're new to a company, or maybe you're starting to play in an adjacent industry that isn't within your core competency, for sure.
It's a great question. I was even thinking, okay, I need to ask AI, hey, where does Ringmaster sit as a B2B podcasting agency? And
Mhm.
I guess I got to take it with a little bit of salt, because if I haven't supplied, back to GEO, if I haven't supplied it with enough information, it's going to just take its best guess at where we sit.
Right. Yeah. And maybe worse than having no information is having wrong information.
Wrong information.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to hear the third
Yeah.
pillar of that approach? Okay. So basically everything that we've outlined so far is kind of theoretical, in that, like, they're interesting ideas, but it's hard for me to say orient my organization around these ideas. Um, in the past, this is where maybe like a traditional consultancy might have like built a strategy binder, right? And they would have laid out all the market forces and the advantages and threats and opportunities, like valid information, right? The problem is that type of format isn't really useful as a working document, and it's not useful to somebody, say, further down the organization who's not interested in like strategy for strategy's sake. They just want to know, like, okay, tell me how to think about the business so I can be more informed to do my job, even if I'm like an individual contributor.
Right.
So the way that I've learned to do this, and the way that I would advocate for, is through story. So I'm by nowhere near the first person to say this. There's lots of other smart people who have established this, but humans are wired to like think in stories, to communicate in stories, to operate from stories. That's a pretty well established principle.
Yeah.
So, like another person in my space, Andy Raskin has been like
Yeah, Andy.
done a great job of like taking that idea, which existed more in academia, and then applying that to a business context. And I would agree with that approach, which is that if you can take that thinking and you can distill that down into a narrative or a story format, then what you're doing is you're like taking all these big ideas and you're compressing them down into something that's very it's tangible. It can be well understood. You can process it easily. It has a beginning and an end, so I can latch onto it. If there's a progression of ideas, so it's easier for me to make sense of this information. Um, when you do that, and when you do it well, you not only can get the team internally aligned, like we've been
Mhm.
talking about, but the really cool thing about that, Casey, is that it gives you a starting point, like a template, a blueprint, if you will, for how you might start to communicate these ideas outside your walls. So if I've decided that I need to clarify to our customers what we're doing, if there's certain like beliefs or biases I need to overcome, that narrative format gives me this starting point for how I think about what I say to our customers and how I structure that information.
How does it do that?
Um, okay, so have you've seen like a good um, like legal drama, I assume,
Sure.
right? So like there's plenty of great movies
Suits.
out there, and you can there's always a
Jag.
scene, yeah, there's always a scene where that trial lawyer is presenting his or her case to the jury. Okay.
Yep.
And remember, the jury is not like, they don't have a law degree, they don't have a legal background, they're novices in this domain. Okay. So what does a jury lawyer do, or a trial lawyer do? What he does is he tries to stack information. He tries to structure arguments in such a way to where when you sequence them properly, you really can't see the situation any other way. Now, there might be some emotion that he'll add to it and some, energy he'll put into the argument. But if he's really good, he'll, stack these things together, stack these arguments together. And it's almost like a, mathematician would build a logical proof. Like, here it is. Here's the evidence. If this is true, then this must be true. If that's true, then this must be true as well. Therefore, my client is innocent, or therefore,
Mhm.
we think he's guilty. When you
Yeah.
when you have that kind of structure to your story, as say a marketer or a salesperson too, you're able to talk to your audience in a way that is it's not so reliant on, say, like, you know pitching a product, so to speak, trying to convince somebody of like all of its benefits or features, or you're not having to rely on tactics or gimmicks. You're really just speaking to the truth. And I think as a marketer, I don't know about you, but if I'm a marketer, I would much rather work with things that are true and put myself in a position where I can speak with conviction and just present how we see the world than try to go about it in more of that, like, gimmicky or convincing way. Not that there's like things you can't draw from that school of sales and marketing, but like, I think there's a level of trust and authenticity you can build, and authority, when you've just taken a very clean look at the world and presented that back to your customers, and kind of let them decide if they agree with you or if they see things differently.
Yeah, it's like a logical, and there's some emotion, and there I definitely get the story too, but it's
Yeah.
like a that like you're saying, like a logic train where by the time you get to
Mhm.
the end, you're like, yeah, that just makes sense.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And yet you're right. It doesn't mean that you can't use emotion, or you can't like lean into the brand side of things and start building on
Right.
emotions. What's I would actually say they augment each other. So I've had some clients where we've gone through that work, and then the brand team takes it and they can build a campaign, and the campaign is much more provocative and emotionally driven. But the cool thing is, because it's grounded on truths in the world, it's like once people process it, they're like, oh, they're not, this isn't just spin. This isn't just something clever. They're actually speaking to something that is is factual, and they're using emotion and things like brand to draw me in, but it's grounded on something much more concrete.
Yeah. Do we need to go to law school to be good marketers? Is that
Oh, I sure hope not.
or just watch enough TV, I think, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Great. So I see how all this stacks on top of it. I mean, sort of when when is it the right time? That's always like the question is when is it the right time
Hmm.
to make a new category?
Hmm. Let me reframe your question just a little bit.
Yeah,
I
please.
think what you're really asking is, when is it time to reevaluate the types of questions that we've discussed, and to kind of reorient our business? Is that really, that's where, and then category creation might be a specific path you take once you've gone through that exercise. Is that really what you're getting at?
Well, I think that's the smarter way to ask it, and because you're right, like saying when is it the right time to create a category almost puts forces it that to be the solution. I guess
Right.
to your point, if you are reorienting, is there a particular because it new category? I mean, a lot of work. Um, is
Right. Right.
is there something that sort of tips the scale for you when you're in that reevaluation process?
Y- in terms of like whether you need to go down that specific path,
Yeah.
it goes back to what we talked about earlier. So if you found that you want to go solve a problem, and there's not really a solution set that exists, um, for you to try to like frame the thing that you're developing
Hmm.
in the context of some other group of solutions, some other category, that is going to work against you. It's going to create the wrong context for your buyers. So if that's the case, like, you need to think about your business from a category design perspective. But you might also look at your situation and find that's not really the right path for you. So I'll give you an example to make this
Yeah.
less abstract. So one of my clients is a nonprofit, and they're quite a large nonprofit, 1,000 plus employees, over 1 billion in revenue. Right? They've been around for a long time. what they found was their, and by the way, I will get to your question. I haven't forgot
Oh
about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um, they found that a couple things had happened. Their organization had started to, I guess you could say, drift in terms of what it stood for and like what it really wanted to convey in its beliefs. Okay, so there was some like ambiguity internally about what do we actually stand for, what do we believe. Okay, and then
Okay.
along with that, they compete just like a commercial business does. Um, and so there had been upstarts that were, bolder and more modern in some of their messaging and some of their branding. They had seen some of their competitors um, enter the category that that was core to their organization, and other competitors exit that category. So the competitive dynamics had changed. And so they had reached this inflection point where they had to reevaluate who they were as an
Mm.
organization. The answer for them, it wasn't to go create a new category. They were actually, this ties back to our Salesforce example. I had to remind them, hey, you're actually the leader of this space. So maybe you may not feel like it, but technically you are. And so for them, it was about reinvigorating um, who they stood for as an organization, going back to some of their like founding beliefs and values, and then finding the courage to agree that this is who we are, and then finding the courage to start articulating those externally, which is a process we're working through now.
Yeah. Can you get that? Do you get that question often where people sort of snap to, should I make a new, should I just burn it all down and make a new thing? In this
Yeah.
example, you're like, guys, you're number one. Maybe just
Hmm.
put some spice back into it, or they're not number one, but they need to understand. Like, there's some other answer, but it's almost like sort of at the basic marketing level, you only really think about, stay in the category, get in a
Yeah.
different category.
Right. Yeah, I came across that question a lot, especially because my entry point into this line of work was through that category design school of thought.
Yeah.
So I even spent a year working with category design advisors, and one of their partners wrote the book Play Bigger, co-authored the book Play Bigger, which kind of lays all this out. So that was my like entry point. You
Yeah.
might, so I would end up talking to a lot of people, especially founders, and they would say something like, "Okay, should we create a new category or not?" Or they may have even gone a step further and they would have said, "Well, what should we call our new category?" And initially, I would be excited about that because I was, um, I think it's a very powerful discipline and it's very appropriate
Oh,
for
for
the right
sure.
situation.
Yeah.
But as I started to think more holistically, I started to realize it's kind of the wrong question to lead with. The way I would frame it now is, what should my category strategy be? And that's what we've been talking about in that process. What should my category strategy be? Is it to continue to lead this space um, that I lead now because we see enough upside for us as a business and we have enough advantages there? Is it to niche down? Is it to um, well, like Zoom, for example, Zoom kind of reinvigorated a stagnant space. They didn't invent a new category.
They did. You're right. They reinvigorated. How? What the heck? If you just analyze them for a second, what did they do and how did they do it?
Yeah. Well, if you probably used the video conferencing
100%.
product before Zoom, right? Like GoToMeeting or WebEx.
And GoToMeeting was better than WebEx, right? WebEx was the beast. They were there.
Yeah.
Right. They were the leader at one point, and everyone kind of hated it. And then
Yeah.
GoToMeeting was like kind of young, and they were fresh, and they brought some life
Uh,
into it, but
right.
stopped somewhere. And then Zoom comes in, just takes
Yeah.
everybody's lunch.
Right.
What's
Well,
that?
they were all like versions, like variations of terrible. Like some
Yeah.
were less terrible than others,
Yeah.
but they were. So that was one piece. It was just from a like user experience perspective, nobody was really excited about those tools because they were just difficult to use. They were buggy. Maybe you needed a more powerful computer to run them or a super fast internet connection. But on top of that, they were also like designed for enterprise users. So like you and me probably wouldn't sign up for a big enterprise account with something like WebEx. There might have been. I'm sure there were like you know entry level tiers that they offered.
Sure.
I don't know. I have to go back and research. But my point is like that whole space was really primarily oriented around like enterprise usage. So Zoom came in and they had a different paradigm. The paradigm was more about being very easy to use without having to buy an enterprise license or any license at all. We have to remember, like, there's a free version of Zoom
True.
that you can
True.
use. You didn't have to have a special software or hardware. You could kind of use it as kind of an everyday consumer. The learning curve was very flat. And so it was a different take on something that had been around for a while. And that take was just different enough to where um, they saw a lot of traction. Now, COVID definitely helped them. So I don't want to like oversimplify the story. They happened to be in the right place at the right time. But
Yeah.
I mean, uh,
And they were like the least bad.
the least bad. Right. Right. So there's a piece that I have. If you go to I'm not trying to like promote my newsletter, but there's a piece that I have bookmarked at the top. It's called the 6 category strategies. And it lays out, it's kind of a primer into how to think about this. So when I looked at the maneuvers businesses had taken, I broke it down into 6. So
Got it.
it might be 7, there might be 4, like you could probably slice and dice it in different ways, but I think it's a useful tool for thinking about the maneuvers you can make from that category perspective.
Awesome. We'll link right to that as well. Man, I love that the question is, what should my category strategy be? Not should I do X, Y, Z, right? It's like, what's the overall strategy, not just the whatever the tactic is of changing this or creating a new one there. And yeah, totally
Yeah.
get that. Can see how people would be fixated on the tactical
Right.
decision, but really
Yeah.
it's way bigger than that.
We see that a lot, right? Like this probably exists in other disciplines, but I've seen it a lot in marketing because that's my background. There's always some new, say, like growth framework or some. It could be a tactic, but it could be something larger, like product-led growth, for example.
Yeah.
And it's a valid approach in the right context. But then people will see it working successfully for one company or another, and they'll kind of like almost like lead with their excitement for that particular thing rather than assessing what's appropriate for their business from first principles. And
Yeah.
I think that that's true with category design. It's a very or category creation, if I want to be more precise. That's a it's a very easy strategy to get excited about it because that's what we can assign to things like Netflix and Tesla and iPhone. And it's very um, it's kind of sexy and romantic in that way.
Right.
It doesn't mean you always should be trying to create a net new category from scratch. It's a
Yeah.
useful discipline to think about and have in your back pocket. And maybe it'll change the way you think about your business in other ways, but it doesn't mean you should always rush to that particular play.
Yeah. Powerful, dude. Man, my next question really is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know these things? Can you take me back to time, little John days? Did you know you're going to be teaching the world category design and strategy around it? What was it like?
Well, teaching might be a little generous. I feel like I
Well,
know about 10% of what I want to know.
sure.
So we're, there's so much left to explore. So we're all kind of learning this
For
together.
sure. For sure.
Long story short, so I I started my career in finance. Uh,
Okay.
Details maybe we can save for another time. I spent a few years there, and then the startup world came calling, and I had a chance to join an early stage startup. In this was around 2010 or so
Okay.
in the social gaming space. Um, it was a lot of fun, very exciting. One of the most maybe formative points in my career. Um, I didn't start off in marketing, but like in most startups, you have to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
And that was a hat that someone needed to take on. And so I started in kind of the analytics and performance marketing side because my background was in data and
Wow.
Excel and all that. But then so I got very good at like the tactical piece of marketing of like dialing in cost of acquisition and
Yeah.
all those things that you can model out in Excel. And long story short, after a few different roles at a few different companies, I started to hit these walls where on paper, you could kind of look at maybe your growth and user acquisition and your numbers, and you could just pencil out, oh, we'll get to 10 million, 100 million, no problem, because everything will just scale perfectly as it has in the past. But I started to realize like we would hit these caps in our growth, and I would start to hit a ceiling. And earlier in our conversation, we were talking about how when marketers like have their blinders on and they can't really get a better sense of the big picture, or they don't even know how to contribute to it. That was the situation I found myself in. Was the reason we weren't growing is because we weren't evolving as a business. We needed to expand what we were offering and the problems we were solving. But we didn't really have a good way to have those conversations as a leadership team and to develop the clarity and conviction we needed to move forward. And that stung, like it stung a lot, because I was naively assuming, these are going to be, these big exits and we're going to ride off into the sunset and everything's going to be hunky dory. And I can write the book about all the successes we had. And none of those really happened. Like even when we got acquired, it was just for, a nominal amount. So that kind of like put this chip on my shoulder where I'm like, you know what, if I want to contribute and I want to help businesses win, especially, businesses with good ideas, at least for me, it's not going to come from like exploring the wide universe of marketing tactics. It's going to come from thinking about strategy and executive alignment. And so I started exploring other disciplines. So I started reading some old school business books. I started reading books about category design. I started looking for even things outside that domain, like philosophy or systems thinking. And over time, I'm always just trying to look for things that can help businesses make better decisions and more quickly align on where they need to go. And that led me to starting my own consultancy a couple years ago. And that's all I focus on now. And I'm loving every day of it.
Man. So who's the right kind of group to work with you in your consulting group?
Yeah, I'll describe it this way first. So I use the term inflection point as a way. It's not a term I invented. I'll come back to that in a second. But when businesses get to this point where the mental model they had, the strategy they had that got them to where they are today, it's not the one that is going to help them succeed in the next chapter, right? Like we talked about earlier, they've got to redefine the problem. They've got to redefine how they're competing. So that's the starting point. When a business is in that situation, that's where somebody like me can come in and help them realign quickly and then get that confidence.
Yeah.
Now there's some like edges to that, right? Like I typically don't work with early stage startups. They often haven't found product market fit. So they're not even at that first inflection point. They're just trying to establish something, they're still trying to write that first chapter, not their second. So when businesses are a little bit further along, typically when they get to, maybe 25 million, 50 million, that's at a point where they're large enough to where they may want to start thinking through these things. And they can afford to invest in partnering with someone like me. So there's a high level points about who I work with. So that term inflection point, it came from CEO of Intel. Andy Grove wrote this book called Only the Paranoid Survive. And it was specifically about their journey through what he termed a strategic inflection point. It was where they had to shift from being a business that made memory chips primarily to a semiconductor or a chip manufacturer. That was a huge shift for them. And so that's a great book to read if you want to understand like what an inflection point looks like in practice. He will also say it's very difficult to recognize when you're at that inflection point in the moment. It's easy to look back in retrospect, but even now he's not sure like what that specific moment in time was, but it doesn't make it any less real. So like part of what is helpful to think about is like, I think his term for his book is very apt because you should always be thinking about what is our situation? Are we at an inflection point? Are we approaching one? Are we equipped with the right mental model going forward? So I just want to give credit to that thinking, and I don't want to claim that I invented that concept on my own.
And a shout out to Andy. I mean, great. But yeah, what a call. What a way to sort of end here. A call to, are we at an inflection point or not? Where are we? Just even that awareness factor. The first thing you brought up, just seeking to know exactly what's going on right now. And I think it's funny. It seems like it might be trite, but really most groups are not going to be thinking about that. And then you just want to wake up.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many day-to-day pressures. It's very difficult to like find the headspace and the perspective to even think about this question. So
Yeah. And where can
yeah.
people, how do you want them to reach out? How do you want them to connect?
I mean, the simple way you can email me, it's john@flagandfrontier.com. So that's flag and frontier.com. Website's the same. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And then I mentioned in my newsletter, it's called the Narrative Field Guide. It's on Substack. So I'm going to be renaming it Breaking Static here. So depending on when you listen to this, it might be one or the other. Just a heads up there.
We'll put, this is the link right next to it. So
right.
Switches call out to it. Oh man, that's awesome. I am so glad you came on here. Thank you so much for coming on here, talking category strategy here and understanding that it's more than just, oh, should I create my own category or shouldn't I? And it's like, hey, maybe you're already number one. We got to take a step back and think about where we're even at before we start pulling triggers left and right. So I'm just so glad for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Casey.
Again, thank you. And for those listening, if you learned something, definitely reach out and then also share this episode. 1 person, 3 people, 9,000. If you learn something, that's what matters. Get that information out there, especially if you have a colleague or a friend in another company that's thinking about the category decisions and maybe they're not being aware yet and they're not even starting at the beginning. Then shake them a little bit and then give them this episode. And with that, John, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
Heck yeah. For those listening, this has been a crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.